Thank you.
I want to get the read from Scott Martin on this, the Kingsview Asset Management CIO. Scott, we have other things to talk to you about, and I do want to get into that. But, I always believe the good intentions of people to try to make whole people impacted by all of this. And as Connell and I were discussing, through no fault of their own, they're just caught up in this. Restaurants that have no choice because they've been told that they can't serve people safe takeout and delivery and all of that. He raised a very good point, the congressman, about kids who are shoved off campus and have to handle this on their own. I get that. But I'm also getting an appreciation of the magnitude of the federal government response here. Is that something you digest, or have you been able to digest it here? And what we're looking at, certainly a lot of economic stimulus to come there from that, but it's big, and we've got a lot of bills to pay in this country. What do you think?
It is big time, Neil, and I'm frankly running out of zeros on the spreadsheet, and this is in Microsoft Excel. So if that doesn't tell you how big this thing is, I think we've got another thing coming. And, there's that old saying of the road to somewhere is paved by good intentions. So, that's another thing that comes to mind when we think about, those comments, Neil, to which I really like how you put it, because it's these comments about, well, if you have an economic interruption, if you get laid off or furloughed or miss some paychecks, it's not your fault. This is an exogenous event, and the perception is we'll make you whole. It brings into that question of moral hazard. It brings into that question of risk versus reward in business. And I think to your point at the end there, whatever it is, whatever the solution is, whether it's Federal Reserve done or whether it's done through Congress or the administration, the amount that's coming into play here as far as, call it bailout money or savior money, is gigantic in numer.
How do you react to some of these staggering numbers at our worst level, down 31% from our highs on the Dow, 28%, I believe, on the S&P, 27% on the NASDAQ? Deep into bear market territory. We've rebounded a little bit, and I find it just surreal that I'm showing folks at home an 1,856-point hit in the Dow and saying, well, it was worse. It's just weird,
It's amazing on days when you look up from maybe your bowl of soup and the market's only down 1,400 in the Dow, and you're actually maybe celebrating and feeling a little bit of levity on that. I mean, Neil, just looking at the speed and the viciousness of this sell-off. I mean, we were at, as you and Connell were talking about, we were at all-time highs just a little over a month ago, roughly, and now we're in a bear market and heading lower. And the speed of which tells me that the market is getting overdone here. And I think to your question, fundamentals are out the window. I mean, this is purely an emotional market. It's a very algorithmic-driven market, meaning a lot of computers are in there playing ping pong with each other and knocking the market down and then knocking it up, as we saw on Friday. So to me, this is a market that if you're a long-term investor, there's advantages here, but I would still let a lot of this volatility subside before I dipped another toe in the water.
It could be just me, but I know we, in the past, Scott, have traded on, big stimulus moves on the part of the Federal Reserve. In this case, 150 basis points in a little more than 2 weeks, flooding the banking system with all the cash they can get their hot little hands on, and no response to the markets. In fact, quite the opposite. So I suspect that maybe the only thing that will change this is signs of this whole coronavirus thing stabilizing. To that end, we're hearing that the NIH is continuing a clinical trial of a vaccine that begins study enrolling at Seattle-based adult volunteers. Of course, Seattle, for quite a time, was the ground zero of cases in this country, 19 deaths reported there. And I'm just wondering if that's the kind of stuff, and really only the kind of stuff, that reverses this market freefall. It's all about the virus and getting a handle on that. And all that other economic incentive stuff, welcome, I'm not trying to minimize it, is not going to move the needle. What do you think?
Yes, I agree. I mean, this becomes almost a medical market where if we can get some advances in the vaccine, if we can get some advances in treatment, obviously, as we all know, as we see the numbers tick up, get a better hold on what really is happening in this country, I think that actually helps the market feel better. And that's why, Neil, I cringe a little bit when we hear some of the officials and some of the quote-unquote experts come on your show and other shows and talk about how strong the economy was and how we can weather this. because the economy was in great shape. I agree that's true, but the market doesn't care about that right now. It doesn't matter if we are even coming off a 6% GDP number in Q4. The fact is the market sees a -5 or a -6, even as we've seen some of the latest predictions coming ahead of us in Q2, and that's what it's trading on, and that's not going to change until the medical part of this is cleared up.
That is well put. Thank you very much, my friend Scott Martin, on all of that. Back with my buddy Conal McShane.